What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Levant Times, where we debunk propaganda of the Levant in under 5 minutes so that you and I have actual evidence-based arguments, so that when people talk about this conflict and the conflicts in the Middle East, we know what the fuck we're talking about, okay? So today I'm going to take you on a journey with me about the research I found. You know how we always hear these arguments about Hamas, you know, oh, Israel's defending itself against Hamas. First of all, I do believe personally, and this is always my own opinion, that Israel has the right to defend itself. Any country has the right to defend itself. But here's the gist, right? Hamas was elected in 2006. Israel became an independent state in 1947. So you're talking about 60 years of illegal occupation and annexation and demolishment of homes and displacement of Palestinians that is completely not being mentioned in media today. So what I want to focus on is kind of unveiling this kind of propaganda about it all being Hamas, because as I mentioned, there's a long history before Hamas. I mean, listen to this, right? But Hamas was created in 1987 and was created during the first Intifada, okay, which is known as the first uprising, the first huge revolt by the Palestinians against their occupier. The first Intifada was a response to 20 years of illegal annexation of the West Bank. So at the time, since 1967 to 1987, Israel was annexing the West Bank illegally, before Hamas was even created. What do you make about that? Gaza was even being annexed and Jerusalem was being annexed. All of that was illegal according to international law. And even the ICJ, which is the International Court of Justice, the biggest court in the world, has dictated and declared that Israel needs to remove its settlements from the West Bank, that it's completely illegal. Now, what's so interesting is, to me, which was so surprising, is that the Israeli government were supporting Hamas, okay? This is the words of Netanyahu himself, okay? Anyone who wants to thwart the establishment of a Palestinian state has to support bolstering Hamas and transferring money to Hamas. I'll tell you what he means by this. This is part of our strategy to isolate the Palestinians in Gaza and the Palestinians in the West Bank. What he's talking about is similar to what the finance minister of Israel talked about when he said Hamas is an asset and the Palestinian Authority is a burden. What they're saying is Hamas is a terrorist entity, or it's regarded as such by the United States. And so by supporting it and bolstering it and allowing it to get funds, then we start creating a divide in the representation of Palestinians. And since the international community is not going to shake hands with an organization that is regarded as a terrorist state, and by strengthening Hamas, we're weakening the Palestinian Authority, then we've got the perfect mix where the two-state solution is not going to happen, because the international community is not going to feel like it has a legitimate partner. And it worked. It fractured the governments between Palestinians. Now in the West Bank, you have the Palestinian Authority and you have Gaza, you have Hamas ruling it, and both of these entities are really not in communication with each other or are not fond of each other. And so it's important to understand that this idea that it's always about Hamas, while Hamas is a terrorist entity and it should be dealt with as a terrorist entity, but civilians should not die in collateral damage for that. The first thing to understand is this conflict dates back way before Hamas. Hamas is a symptom of Israel's reckless violations of international law. Hamas is a symptom of Israel's occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. Hamas is a symptom of Israel's demolishment of homes, the killing of innocent civilians, the displacement of individuals, and the burning of villages and destroying these villages. So if you don't want Hamas to exist, which I'm with you, how about you solve the root issue that is creating Hamas? Because if you don't solve that root issue, it's only a matter of time that another Hamas pops up. And so the root problem here is to abide by international law. So Israel, I call on you to abide by international law, because I believe Israelis or Jews have the right to live in those lands, and by you violating the international law, you're putting Israelis and Jews under huge national security risk, and you're leading to the fruition of these terrorist organizations that we all don't want to see.